Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Mignot, CEO of the cultural communications agency D Flash. For this really special episode, I'm doing it in conjunction with my friends at Fly Female Founders, as we had a great conversation with our phenomenal speakers today, and we wanted to keep the conversation going. So I am so excited to have Jordyn Dahl, who's a small business editor at LinkedIn, and Sery Kim, who's the former assistant administrator at the SBA for small business at the SBA. We're going to talk about what's happening in small businesses, the future of it all, how you can help navigate this really unique and unusual time, but hopeful time. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hi, ladies.
Hi, how are you?
Good, it's a wild and wacky time.
Never ending.
Never ending. But that being said, we're in a new year and kicking off things in a really fun and awesome way. So I'm excited for the future. So the podcast does not change even though we're in a new year. So whoever wants to go first, the first question is always the same. What was your first job?
I think Jordyn should go first.
Hello, bus.
I'm gonna let you go.
My first job was in a very small town in Colorado called Durango. It is 8 hours away from Denver. So it's like really the middle of nowhere, but beautiful area. And I actually started out as an intern at the newspaper there as a small daily. And 3 months in, I was like 21 at this point. And I walked into the publisher's office and I basically told him that he should hire me full time and create a new role that didn't exist. And somehow he did. So then I became a full-time reporter. I created and managed all of their social media platforms. I wrote about business. It was a wonderful time, wonderful experience. It's cool being somewhere like that where there's not a whole lot of other news outlets or competition. You really get the lay of the land. And when you're working in a smaller organization, whether it's a newspaper, a business, whatever it is, if it's smaller, there's just so much to be done. And so it's a lot easier to break out and do different things.
Wow, now that's a great one, and definitely kind of parlays into what you're doing now. So, okay, now Sery, you got a lot to live up to here. What was your first job?
I know, I really regret letting Jordyn go first.
Yeah, see, this is what happens when you do that.
I know, but Jordyn truly is spectacular and a leader. But for me, I just had, the traditional teenage experience. I grew up in the Dallas, Texas area. And when I was 15, I went and worked at a fashion retail store. Basically, I spent the whole summer folding shirts and pants and cleaning up dressing rooms. And I never, ever wanted to do that ever again in my entire life. So I doubled my efforts into studying and really followed my Tiger Mom's advice that if I study for the SATs, I don't have to work. So that's what I ended up doing subsequently.
Oh, that's great advice.
See, I was just going to say, this is perfect. Because it's like, sometimes your first job from, having now done this, I think I've now done 200 episodes of the show. The reason I always ask this question is because whatever pops into someone's mind as the job that they talk about always relates to what they do now, whether it's like, I learned so much and it kind of put me on my path to what I do now, or I learned I hate that crap and I'll do something completely different. But it always plays into the stuff that they do now. So thanks, ladies, for kind of kicking it off. So speaking of you, Sery, okay, from the job that you couldn't stand to the job that you have now, what was that journey like?
So my journey was actually quite circuitous. I went to school And I thought that I was going to be a corporate lawyer and I was going to clerk at the Supreme Court, be a partner at 30, and just blaze the trail in the legal profession. And when I finished college in 2 years and then graduated law school at 23, I realized that my life is not the one that I want in law. And so I actually ended up, very fortuitously enough, being plucked and placed into politics. The mentor that I had in law school, he was best friends with then Governor Bush, who ended up being President Bush, and so close that they were in small group Bible study together. So I was plucked and put into Washington, D.C. and spent, 15 years doing politics and public policy and dipped in and out here and there, but mostly focused on my passion, which is actually enabling and empowering a change in how we live in society. And I think that's just like such a broad thing, and you can do it in lots of different avenues. But I'm so nerdy about my love of government and love of public policy that, politics really was the right route for me.
Wow, awesome.
I can't believe you graduated law school at 23.
I was going to say, like, wait, you graduated law school at 23? Because you're just like, I am not stopping.
I don't know about you, Laura, but I'm looking back at what was I doing at 23? Like, definitely not something that should be talked about on a podcast. Certainly not.
I mean, okay, so I'm gonna go down the overachiever route with Sery, because I was getting my MBA, so I got mine at 24. So I also kind of went right into going into business school, because I did not get into law school. The one I wanted to apply, I want to go to, I didn't get into, because I'd bought my LSATs twice. So the next opportunity was graduate school. So I went to get my MBA from a small school here in New York, because I already spent 4 years and lots of my parents' money at NYU. And so like I had to slightly change a little bit. And of course now I'm an entrepreneur. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. Not really.
And I totally empathize with that too, because I believe that when doors close, they close for a reason. Like, I also got turned down by my first choice of law school. I applied to Harvard Law and I got waitlisted, which I think is ridiculous considering, again, I graduated college in 2 years. I was second in my class of 5,000. I mean, there's no reason for them to have waitlisted me, right? So Harvard, I'm so pissed at you. And but I went to UT, and at UT, I found this mentor that led me into politics, that led me into this life that I'm so passionate about, that I'm willing to just, spend 20 hours a day working on. So I believe so firmly that when a door closes, don't look at the closed door, just go forward.
Yeah.
Look at you giving gems already, and I haven't even started asking my questions. This is why I wanted to have you guys on the show. So yeah, and Jordyn, how about you? So how did we go from, working at that one place to right about now?
I love what Sery just said about when one door closes, it's for a reason, and take it as something good, even if it stings quite a bit in the time. I was a finalist for a job at a pretty prestigious newspaper in Florida, and they flew me down. I thought I was a shoo-in. I had an interview with the head editor, and we clashed so much. Like, within 5 minutes of this meeting, and this was after 8 hours of interviews, like, wow, you and I are not going to get along. And I walked out that interview and I had to run to the airport. I was running late, about to miss my flight. I'm like, well, I didn't get that job, so now what? And I was so bummed. But it was actually the best thing, because what I had really always wanted to do was live abroad. And I have always had this love of Asia and China in particular. And so I was like, well, you know what? There's just no jobs here that I'm super passionate about or that I feel like I have to have. And I'm young, I'm not married, I don't have kids, I don't have a house. Like, I'm totally untethered. If I'm going to do it, now's the time. And so I found a job teaching English in Beijing. And I had quit my job and sold all of my possessions within the span of a month, and was on a plane to Beijing. Speaking no Chinese, I could say hello, and that was the extent of my knowledge. But it was the best decision I ever made. I spent 5 years in Beijing. I got my master's there. I went back to reporting. I was a tech reporter for Forbes. And then my last stint, I was working in foreign policy at the Carnegie Endowment, which gave me a whole new different insight into government and more of the work that Sery is doing. And then I knew I wanted to come back to the US and be closer to family. And I ended up getting recruited by LinkedIn for the job that I'm in now. And it's kind of funny because I didn't think I would be back in the small business world. I spent so much time in policy and in tech that I thought that was sort of my future at the time. But it's been great to be back to my roots, as I started off covering local businesses in Colorado. And I just love the variety of it. And this feels like a group that is so underserved, that it's been really meaningful for me before the pandemic, and certainly even more so now, to be able to do what I can to help them and connect with them.
Awesome. You guys are just, it's so lovely to hear like the backstories. And this is why I wanted to have you both on the show, but also because what we're talking about next is that it's so good to hear how you got to where you are at this moment. Because I think for so many people right at this moment, they're like, oh my gosh, everything I thought I was going to be doing, I'm not going to do now because pandemic. And I have to figure out, how do I navigate all this and what can I do? And, as Sery said, like one door closes, another one can bust wide open in a way that you never thought before. And you guys are just really wonderful, shining examples of that. So let's talk small businesses. Like, okay, Jordyn, you had a great presentation with our, my fellow Fly Female founders last week. And what the heck does the future hold for us? Like, what are you seeing?
The future is always a question mark. Whatever we think we know today, I feel like could be completely different tomorrow. And that has been probably the hardest thing for business owners. It's just the amount of uncertainty. But we did start 2021 with a pretty hopeful note. We have a vaccine. It's getting rolled out. There's a bit of a light at the tunnel, right? We can see that there is an end point to this. So if we just make it through to that point, then things are going to get a lot better. But until that happens, and hopefully people don't turn off this podcast as soon as I say this word, but business owners are going to have to continue to pivot. And I know, if I never have to say that word again after this year, I will be a really happy person. And I think that being adaptable is such a great skill set. And that was something that I actually saw a lot in tech in China that I really admired, is how quickly they adapted their products to what consumers wanted, and getting that feedback from consumers directly and then iterating from there. And I think that is something that business owners are now adopting and doing because, they have to. They're all online and they're competing with one another. And so you have to meet the consumer where they are and find a way of breaking through the noise. And I think there is a real opportunity for small businesses right now because there is a light on them in a way that there normally isn't. We're not usually talking about your local bakery down the street or your accountant or your favorite restaurant and bar. They're kind of taken for granted. But right now, consumers are so aware of what they're facing and the struggles that they're facing, and they're willing to put their dollars toward those businesses. And so I think taking as much advantage of that as you can is really critical.
Yeah, it is all about the pivots and trying to get out there in a way that's gonna be the best you possibly can in this kind of crazy world. And Sery, coming from the SBA side of the universe, what have you seen over the past year, and where do you think we're headed?
Well, I would say I've seen three things. One is the same thing that Jordyn mentioned, which is totally spot on. There's so much uncertainty. It felt like every single day we were on slippery sand. There wasn't like you could wake up one day and know, okay, on Wednesday, January 20th, there will be an inauguration at noon. I mean, we just did not know from hour to hour, minute by minute, day to day, what was going to happen because the world was shifting so fast. And I think that's probably the main takeaway that I took from SBA. The second thing is, change in government is like an iceberg breaking off. It takes literally hundreds of years. It takes forever. And with the SBA this year being at the literal forefront of the COVID response and COVID crisis and how small businesses would continue to remain sustainable, I will say very candidly now, as the former assistant administrator, I don't think we move fast enough. I think that there was an opportunity for the SBA to communicate more consistently, to communicate more quickly, and we didn't do that. And so I think there was like a real missed opportunity there. And the third part is, we know as women, because all three of us are, that the marketplace for an entrepreneur, for a business leader, for an educator, for a mom, it's always harder to be a woman. And I think COVID really showed that the burdens that women take on silently, childcare, taking care of the home, taking care of the health of parents, the things that disproportionately women deal with, this year really showed how much of our daily lives are quietly absorbed by women and how, quite frankly, unfair it is.
That's the thing. I think the road for female business owners is just so difficult. I mean, that's why I think everyone had so many questions at our panel about the PPP loans and the SBAs and the EDLs, because we're just oftentimes the communication is just not given to female-led small businesses the way it is to male-led small businesses. And I also think it's also like kind of culture and conversation, because you have the thing where like, okay, guys will go play golf, guys will be at a bar, and they'll, instead of talking, and they'll be like, well, here's a stock I have, here's my great accountant, yeah, I actually got that great credit card with all these points. And when women get together, we talk about who's that new boyfriend, oh my god, I can't believe you broke up, where are you going on your next trip? And as a result of that, those conversations about information that would kind of come through our kind of own culture and communities oftentimes doesn't happen. And then when the government's out there, they're just like, hey, go look on our website. I hope it works out for you. So we end up getting stuck very often.
Totally. I think going off of that conversation aspect, I think men tend to have more time to put toward looking for these resources. They often have those networks already built up where they know where to go. And women, to Sery's point, are often tasked with childcare, with some of these more administrative tasks. And so if they're not running their business, they're taking care of their families and their children and all these other things. And so meeting them where they are is so critical. And I think community is really big into this. I have a group of girlfriends, and we actually do talk about finances and we talk about stocks. And part of our conversation is, women don't talk about this enough. And we don't talk with our male friends about this, but it's so critical to do. And so I think normalizing that conversation among your female peers and in your friend group is really critical.
Yeah, and I just really want to emphasize what Jordyn said about like having a group of girlfriends. Like, she is somebody who I believe is such a genuine person and is so tied into like lifting others up. I think it's important when you find your friends, when you find your relationship, when you find your business community, to find the people that you want to be most like. Because if you are surrounded by people that you want to become, then you will be that person. If you surround yourself with people who want to talk about how terrible it is to be single and like they don't want to talk about business and how terrible the world is, then your reaction and your life experiences will be negative. But if you surround yourself with people like you, Laura, or like Jordyn, then you will see the possibility that's there because their experience is positive.
Yeah, look, it is. I have noticed. I guess this is the anniversary of like my 10th year officially, I guess, of being a full-time entrepreneur. And it very much is. I think as I've gotten older, I have definitely stratified my groups of girlfriends, and so like I've got my girlfriends I've had for 20 years, who know way too much about me, and I'll have to bribe them when I become like Oprah or something. And then I've got, I will so have to bribe them. But then I've got my agency friends, when I work in the agency world, and then I have my entrepreneur friends, and then my entrepreneur friends buckets. Those buckets are the ones that I usually have the conversations about business, because we're all kind of in this icky boat together. And I remark upon, like, I went to this private dinner once, and it was like, 8 guys and 4 women, and so all the women were talking to each other. And one of the women was talking about, like, she was trying to figure out how to navigate her bank, because she was trying to figure out if she was going to have to ask her parents for a loan to cover her payroll because she was behind waiting on some client payments. And I said, well, do you have a line of credit? And she's like, what? I was like, do you have a line of credit? And she's like, how do I even get that? I'm like, well, have you had that bank for a while? And she's like, yeah, I've had it since I was a kid. I'm like, I opened my small business account there and I have a credit card there. And I'm like, okay, so go to the bank tomorrow and tell them you want to open a line of credit, because you have a successful business. You've been running for 5 years, and you've been banking with them. And she's like, you think they'll do that? And I'm like, they're not going to tell you no. And then about a week later, she sent me a text, and she's like, I need you to send me your address. And I'm like, okay. And she sent me this huge care package of like bath and body fun stuff and like yoga stuff, because she was a PR woman. Because she's like, you saved my business, because had I not sat next to you at that dinner, I would not have known that I could have gotten a line of credit, and I would have had to deal with my parents to getting a loan from them to cover my payroll. I will, anytime I look at that credit line now, I will think of you. So this is my little token. And I was like, and it was one of those things where it's like, you realize that it still doesn't happen enough in female entrepreneurial communities, where we talk about this stuff honestly and openly. And we need to do more of it. Otherwise, we will, especially as we hit this unfortunate recession, we'll continue to have a lot more problems digging ourselves out of it.
Totally, 100%.
And so I guess for you guys, because you're kind of on different sides of the house, Sery, like when as you're working for the SBA, were there times where you were like, I have to give you guys this information because nobody else will tell you?
Well, yeah, I mean, the perfect example of that is how I connected with Jordyn. I mean, she reached out, and she has this amazing platform where, obviously LinkedIn is a global, well-recognized name. And a lot of times, there's hoops to get communication out internally in government, but I just decided to take the initiative and say, yes, this is something that I needed to do. And based upon, just like the feedback and the interaction and the cascading professional opportunities for myself, I would say that it was worth it. And so sometimes, at the end of the day, you just have to decide what's the risk and is it worth it? And for me, it just really is worth it to just communicate and tell people more information, especially right now when we are living in an information void.
It's such an information void. How do you think we can sort of fix this information void? Is it more websites? Is it more conversations? Like, we're having been on the obviously the government side of the universe, what do you think would be helpful?
Well, I think the main thing that would be helpful is consistency. there's too much information. It's a fuselage. It's like a fire hydrant of information coming out, right? Like coronavirus broke the fire hydrant of what was regular order in the world. And as a result, the water that's coming out is just data, but none of it is contained. None of it is sustained. You don't really know whether it's worthwhile. And I think what the government needs to do is be consistent in how they deliver information. For instance, I think it would be very helpful Monday morning, 9 a.m. every week for the next year or 2 years or however long it takes to get out of there, for there to be an information seminar where the government tells the private sector, these are the resources available to you. And I think without that consistency, you will never, ever be able to overcome the information chasm.
That's such a great idea. Did you write that on like a Post-it note before you left? Because I feel
no, I gave them this idea months and months and months and months ago, and they told me no, and I was like, too bad.
I'm so grateful and glad that Sery broke the dam and sort of went out on her own to come onto the show and talk about it, because from a reporting standpoint, there has been a real vacuum of information about PPP, about different programs, about what is happening. And so that what traditionally would be a government comms job has sort of fallen to the reporters. And we're now kind of acting as a liaison and answering all these questions. And like, I, for one, am thrilled and happy to do it. But my fear is that what if I'm reading or interpreting this wrong and incorrectly, and I'm giving them the wrong information? And I would so much rather have the source come on the show directly and answer those questions to businesses, because there is such a massive amount of information coming out, but it's also disjointed. You have some information coming from this outlet, or maybe you're on Twitter or you're on Facebook, and there is this tendency of treating all content with the same amount of attention, regardless of the substance. And there's also a lack of being able to connect all the dots and seeing how do these different pieces that you have collected from all of these outlets and all these content places, how does it fit together? And so having the SBA come out to Sery's idea of every Monday and answering these questions and connecting all of those dots would really be fantastic. And I hope the new administration is listening and that they take Sery's suggestion.
And I'm going to yell it shout it from the rooftops, because I think, the life of a small business owner is so compacted with stuff on a daily basis that it's hard to find space in your brain to think of anything else. And if you can just be like, oh, if I know, I can put a calendar reminder at 9 a.m., I can go to the SBA website and go look at the most up-to-date information. That's something I can do while I have my first cup of tea in the morning. So yeah, I will be yelling repeatedly about this. Thanks, Sery.
You're welcome. I hope it blows up your podcast and it becomes like the most popular podcast.
Oh, trust and believe this probably will. But and Jordyn, I mean, I think we're all in this sort of weird set of circumstances where we're trying to figure out how do you as a small business owner pivot effectively, but also, what if you don't want to pivot? What if you have a business whereby you managed to navigate the past year, kind of doing what you were doing previously, and you're kind of stuck in your ways. Do you think that there's still things for you that you can do? Do you think you'll still have a future, or you think everything that you're seeing is saying that it's innovate or die?
That is a good question. I think no matter how successful you are, there is always more to learn, and there's always going to be more opportunities. And so even if you were, Bill Gates and you create Microsoft, whatever it is, there is always more that you can do, more that you can learn. And so I would encourage business owners, regardless of how successful they are, to always be open to that and be open to opportunities that come their way, and not, be so focused or necessarily like closed-minded on what it is that they're doing. But in response to the first question, if you haven't navigated the last year and things are going well for you, like so many snaps, just well done. That is incredible. Keep doing what you're doing, because there's so many business owners who are not in that position, and you have figured out how to make it work. And that is tremendous. I think you should always be looking to see where you can streamline processes, look and see what other businesses are doing, and if there's something that might work well for you. But there's certainly no reason to completely reinvent the wheel only because everyone's talking about pivoting when you have a very successful business that is doing well amidst all of this turmoil.
I think that's kind of all you can really do, because it's still just such a wacky and weird time. And I would be remiss, sir, if I didn't ask, like, are there some like kind of top four things or three things that you'd recommend small business owners utilizing the SBA for? Like, I know we had talked about the online courses and obviously getting the loans, but having been an insider, like, what are the kind of top 3 or 4 things that you think that we should all know that the SBA can help you with?
Well, I think the first thing is a connector. You are not alone right now. There's 5.3 million businesses that got PPP loans, right? And not all of them are like the $10 million companies who never should have gotten them. 84% of all loans went to people who needed less than 150,000. And so I think the number one thing the SBA can do is just connect you to other people who are like you, who are in the same financial situation, who are in the same geography, or, who you could potentially partner with. The SBA district office is the best place to start. You can just go to sba.gov, look for a district office, and they will provide you free counseling, free consulting to connect you with other people in your community who are similar to you. And then the second thing that I would say is that right now, if you just email people at the SBA, they're so overwhelmed. I have to tell you, it's pretty easy to figure out like what an SBA email address is. And I got thousands of emails from people who had questions about EIDL loans, who had questions about PPP loans, things that I had no control over in my portfolio. And so if you're just emailing the SBA, that's not going to help you. What the number one thing the SBA can do other than connect you to, and you briefly mentioned loans, is that the SBA exists to provide you with solutions outside of a global pandemic. They are there to provide you microloans as small as $500 to get your business going, as well as counseling and coaching to take you through the process of actually executing your business plan, and then walking you through scaling up from a solopreneur to somebody who maybe get up right to that 500 employee limit, which is what the SBA exists. So I really recommend that when you look for the SBA, if you're just looking for EIDL and PPP, it's not going to help you. They're so overwhelmed. But if you look at the SBA for other small business-based solutions, the answer and the personnel are available.
I love that about connecting and finding people like you and in your peer group. Going back to our conversation earlier about your friend group and what you talk about, these are the people who you're going to be talking about your business plan. What lender did they go to? What grants are they applying for? What paperwork did they have? And to your point, Laura, about what is a line of credit? How do I get one? I mean, these are the kinds of friendships that are going to be so critical to your business, and not just in being successful, but also having a group of like-minded people that you can brainstorm and just commiserate with, and know that you're not really alone in all of this. I think that's really important.
Yeah, it all of it is just so very important at this moment. I think that, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the fact that obviously there is the She Session. We just got the labor statistics numbers from December, whereby like 140,000 women lost jobs, and most of those were women of color, and no men lost jobs. It was all women. Where do you both see like the future for women in business, and especially small business owners? Like, are there special things as female led businesses that we can be mindful of, or other programs that are available that we can kind of wrap our arms around?
What I would say and this goes for business owners, irregardless of gender or nationality, is to get in touch with your local business leaders, because states and cities have created programs to give grants to local businesses. Some of them are geared toward women, some are for really micro businesses, thinking like 5 to 10 employees. The requirements kind of run the gamut, and they really depend on your area, but there is free money out there. So take advantage of it. And maybe create a group on Facebook or on LinkedIn, wherever you spend your time and your peers are. Reach out to some of the female business owners in your area and start a conversation, because probably they would also enjoy having this group, and they probably have the same questions that you do.
And I would say that, I focus a lot on women's empowerment. Both of you do as well. But the number one bit of advice I give to women who want to be successful in business, you have to find a male mentor. You have to find somebody who is a man, because it's still all run by men. As successful as women are in business, as empowered as we are, irrespective of my politics, we just now have the first female vice president. That took 260 plus years. It's just something that is reality and has nothing to do with a woman's capability. And so I think it's really important for women to find male mentors, but also, of course, to have somebody who is a woman to walk beside you.
Oh, yes, this is so important. Thank you, Sery, for saying this, because I think this is one of the most important things that doesn't get talked about enough, because it's like, for all my really awesome female founder and female entrepreneur groups that I have, it is my dudes that come in handy the most oftentimes. Because, you have, like, men are 48% of the country. And oftentimes they're in much more senior positions than women that you also follow. And oftentimes they have access to things that you don't. Like I remember, a reason I know about the whole credit line thing was because of my former COO was the one who told me about it. Like he was a fractional COO who only worked with women-led companies. He was awesome, great guy, love him forever. And that was one of the very first things he said. He's like, yeah, we go out and get a line of credit. Like, we don't do anything. Like, we don't spend our own money. Like, that's what the bank is for. And it was all just so very nonchalant. And over the years, I've always tried to keep as many like good dudes around, because for every, obviously we know in business there are some awful people, but for every kind of jerk that you will run into, there are always going to be 2 to 3 awesome people you're going to meet who are going to have your back and will come through in really special ways. So it's like diversifying the friend group so that it is also so it's not gendered is also really important, because you never know who someone might know and how they might be able to help you. So you got to keep those things open as much as possible.
Yeah, that's great advice. I know just in my own personal career, men have actually been my greatest advocates, and the ones who are true allies have helped me the most, and not because the women haven't wanted to, but they just had conversations and access to people. And I remember my first job, Laura, that you had asked me out about at the start of the podcast. I had a male manager, and he actually went in before even handing me the offer and went back into the publisher's office and renegotiated a higher salary for me. and push them to give me a fair wage. And
Wow.
didn't tell me till after, but that was obviously life-changing.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's, you never know who are going to be the folks who are going to have your back or are talking about you in rooms that you had no idea they were even talking about you in. And then lo and behold, you get an email. You're like, what? So
that's another thing of advice, actually, that I'm trying to remember who gave it. My department head, Dan Roth, he's the editor-in-chief of LinkedIn News, and he interviews CEOs from all kinds of companies. And I want to say it was a woman from Goldman Sachs, but she talked about the importance of having one ally who you know is going to be in the room, because so many decisions are made without you being there, and you have to make sure that there is someone in there who is advocating for you and has your best interests at heart. And I think that applies to people who are working in a normal job. If you are a manager or if you are a business owner, you need to make sure that you know who your advocates are and who you can rely on.
That's incredible advice. That's really good.
yeah, it's so good. You guys are great. I think I would be remiss if not saying, like, so, this has obviously been a really weird and trying time for us all. How are you all navigating with your self-care and this wild set of circumstances that we find ourselves in?
I mean, for me, I have like the most amazing partner. Mike is just the absolute best. And this is like totally not on brand or topic, but man, I dated a lot of idiots and jerks for a really long time. So it was like, I mean, so many terrible guys. And so, right when I needed someone amazing and thoughtful, like he appeared. And then, a year later, COVID happened, and it actually brought us closer together. And I actually was sad when we had to stop quarantining because we had such a great time together. And so for me, just to have somebody like that, it's really great. And then also, I gained 14 pounds in 2020. I ate a lot of Doritos. And so for me in 2021, self-care has been working out like a fiend. And I really love it because it kind of like anchors my day.
I'm so glad you
that's awesome.
that, because my weekly test for myself is putting on real pants again, since I'm working.
Yes, exactly. Totally.
Every week it gets a little harder.
A little harder, just a little bit.
A little tighter. So I hear you. Working out has been great in terms of just getting outside and going for a walk and getting in fresh air. It does wonders for the mind. And I always kind of dread doing it because I feel like there's so much that I haven't done yet, and I needed to check this email and I need to do that. And then before I know it, it's dark and cold out. And let's be real, I'm lazy. I'm not going to go out if it's dark and cold. So just like making myself actually get out during the day, and even if it's for 10, 15 minutes, has been really good. But I totally second Sery about having a great partner. And I'm so glad you found him after all the jerks. Something that I had read, and I think it was like Lean In, something Sheryl Sandberg, and she had talked about the importance of your partner. And when I had read it at the time, I was single, so I kind of like hemmed and hawed over it. I kind of, went in one ear and out the other. And now that I have my partner, my husband, Christoph, and he has been such a rock. And if I am swamped with work, he cleans the house, he makes dinner, he like takes on all of the duties that typically go to a woman, no questions asked. And it wasn't until I sort of experienced that I realized how important that advice is of choosing who your partner is and making sure that you have an equitable partnership in, your marriage, your partnership, your relationship, whatever it is. So that has been really key. Another thing that I'm doing is I'm getting back to my kid days, and I am puzzling a lot, which I have not done in like 20 years. But it has been oddly soothing.
So fun.
Wow. No, it's funny. You guys are I'm on the same road. Yeah, I try and put on real pants, and then I'm like, you know what? Not so much.
So overrated.
But it's just funny to me. Like I never owned a pair of sweatpants until this pandemic started. Like I owned leggings for the gym. Like that was about it. And I learned the wonder that is joggers. And so I'm like, these are amazing. They're so comfortable. Why was I always wearing skinny jeans and sucking out my entire my rib cage? So yeah, I've definitely started gone back on exercising. I was really good for almost the entire year, like riding my bike and like getting out there. But like once like November came, I was like, I can't anymore. So I literally like started back on my like workout accountability group buddy system thing this morning, and I feel sore now. So God, but yeah, I'm with you on like finding the partner. So I'm on this hunt to find like the person who is also you're kind of ride or die, because a lot of my friends who are coupled or say this very often. It's super helpful to have someone who like has your back. And to my fellow single folks out there, like the dude's out there somewhere. I know.
No, he is. And I just want to say something like so that I feel is really important. Like when I met Mike, I didn't know he was going to be this amazing guy. Like Mike makes the bed every morning. At night, he does turn down service. He makes sure I have water. And like, I mean, it's just like really sweet, right? But he certainly did not do that when we first started dating, because I am not that kind of girl, right? So we have to find and recalibrate our expectations. And I think that's true in relationships, and also it's true in business. Like, if your expectation is you're going to be a successful entrepreneur and you're going to have amazing girlfriends, that's what's going to happen. If your expectation is you're going to have an amazing life partner and he's going to do the things that you need, then you need to believe in that, because my ovaries are dusty and I held out hope, that this man existed and he showed up. So I just want to say to you, Laura, he exists, but like, you just have to give him some bandwidth to not be so great in the first couple of months. It has nothing to do with business.
Oh my God, you're the best. I swear you're the best. I love how it's like the SBA administrator has like the best dating advice for me. So this makes perfect sense. This is why I love doing this
I'm
show.
here for all of it.
Yeah, because I've dated a lot of jerks as well. So but I weirdly think this is the year that I actually will find the dude. It's like all signs are pointing to it. So I am very confident about the future. But last question for you, wonderful ladies who were so much fun. Do you have a give and or an ask of the audience? And so this can be anything from, hey, like, here's a great book I read, or like go to the SBA.gov and sign up for this stuff. Whatever you guys want. Whoever wants to go first, jump in.
Jordyn, you want to go first since I started this thing with you going first?
I was about to say, do you want to take this one for the team? Okay, a give and an ask. My ask would be that business owners get on LinkedIn, connect with me, tell me what's going on in your world. What is it that you have questions about? What can I do to help you? And who can I connect you with? That would be my ask. My give. So like everybody else, I've been binge watching the internet, and something consistently about me is I am always at least 2 or 3 years behind any trend. This goes for skinny jeans, gossip. Ladies, I kid you not, I did not find out that Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt broke up until 3 years after it happened.
What?
I don't.
Shocking. This is terrible.
I did catch up. I went on a very deep binge reading. But that also goes for TV shows. So I have been holding out and being a snob and not watching Schitt's Creek. And I finally caved and ran out of things to watch. It's hilarious. And it's become my favorite thing.
Wait, what show is this?
Schitt's Creek.
You know, everyone and their mother has told me about Schitt's Creek, and yet I have yet to watch this show. And I know I should, because people who I respect their level of funny and I would tend to agree with it, say it's hilarious, but I have yet to watch it. So, okay, another in the bucket.
The other one I would recommend is Kim's Convenience. It's
oh my gosh, it's my favorite.
I love it. It's so great, right?
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
I'll let Sery explain it because it's delightful.
Okay, so I'm Korean American because you can't see me. So I actually am Korean. And the show is about a Korean immigrant family who lives in Canada. And they own a convenience store. It's a mom and dad and a son and a daughter. And it's just like the story of being an immigrant Korean family. So if you know any immigrant family or you have brokered in any stereotypes, you will appreciate all of it. But it is so funny because it's like family dynamic, being crazy. Like I mean, if you watch a season of it and you don't like it, I can't offer you any advice about the SBA. Like, it's just amazing.
That's
so good.
You'll be like, no, I'm just not doing it.
No, I can't.
And so what is it on Netflix or Amazon?
I think Netflix. It's on Hulu. Is it on Netflix or Hulu? Netflix.
I watched it on Netflix, but that was at the start of the pandemic, so who knows where it is now.
Netflix. Try Netflix.
Okay. All right.
Also, speaking of eye candy, the son on that show is some serious eye candy. So if for nothing else, you can watch it for that.
Totally.
Hey, I watch programming for the storyline and the humor and the clothing. I am not going to be ogling the men. That's why when I watched Bridgerton 3 times in a row, episode 6, it was because of the clothing. It had nothing to do with Simon at all. He's just a duke. I mean, come on.
I mean, oh my gosh, Shonda Rhimes can do no wrong. She should just write the world plot for 2021 because Bridgerton is the best thing that I've seen on Netflix in a long time. It's so good. How did we get off on this tangent?
I don't know. I'm loving it.
I asked you what you wanted to give and ask, and this is what happens. This is how it works. Great conversations always end up this way. Bridgerton was by far I watched it in 2.5 days. And I was just like, wait, what? Hold on, what did I just say? Shonda Rhimes, you're right, Sery. If I think we'd all be better off if Shonda Rhimes just like wrote Earth's Flatlines, because they'd be multicultural. Women would be in the lead, managing things, and there'd be a little bit of crazy, but like just enough for you to manage. So I believe that I would happily live on planet Shondaland. It sounds like a great place to me.
So good.
You guys are hilarious. But I can keep chatting with you all because about small businesses, women empowerment, not dating jerks, and really hot guys on Netflix. But we do have to go. But Sery and Jordyn, it was such a delight to continue the conversation with you all. It was a wonderful, wonderful chat and chock full of great information. So thank you so very much.
This was a blast.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so
much. You all were great. And we'll put all the details in the show notes about where you can find the things for the SBA, how you can get in contact with Jordyn. And hopefully, this helps put a lot of our great small business owners on the path to getting success. So look, we know that there's a lot of information out there right now, and there are a lot of people who are out there trying to help. And so I encourage my listeners to click on those links, apply for the loans, apply for the grants. There is money available. Do it now. It's so very important. So thank you so much. And that is our show.